I swear the whole thing started so casually that my brain didn't even bother tagging it as suspicious. No dramatic music, no gut feeling, no foreshadowing. Just my girlfriend standing by the closet, stuffing clothes into a small black tote while saying, "I just need some me time tonight." It threw me off because she said it the way someone says, "I need to pick up milk." Flat, routine, almost cheerful. I was sitting at the kitchen counter, halfway through a cup of lukewarm coffee, trying to finish a work email I'd already rewritten 3 times. I looked up at her, waiting for some sort of explanation, but she just kept packing. A sweater, a book, her hairbrush. She didn't look upset, didn't look tired, just determined. "Sure," I said, because honestly, what else do you say to that? I didn't want to sound clingy or paranoid or like one of those people who spirals because their partner uses a slightly different tone than usual. So I kept it simple, calm, normal. She walked over, kissed my cheek, a quick, distracted peck, and grabbed her keys from the hook by the door. Her perfume lingered a moment after she left, drifting through the apartment like a reminder of how familiar everything felt or used to feel. The door closed with the same soft click I'd heard 1,000 times, but that night it felt like the period at the end of a sentence I hadn't realized she was writing. For a while I just sat there, not thinking, not worrying, just sitting. The apartment felt strangely hollow, like a place that had already forgotten someone lived in it. Even the refrigerator hum sounded louder than usual, and somehow that made it worse. I kept replaying our last week together in my mind. The rushed conversations, the half-finished dinners, the way she'd been answering everything with "yeah, sure," or "later." But I told myself couples go through phases. People get stressed. Nothing was wrong, except something was wrong. I kept glancing at my phone, even though I wasn't expecting anything. I pretend to check the time, then quickly scan the notifications like maybe she'd magically text in the 2 seconds since the last time I looked. Nothing. No, made it safely. No love you, no don't wait up. Just the silent glow of the screen. By 9, the knot in my stomach had tightened. By 10, it felt like a fist. By 11, I talked myself into believing she just needed a break from absolutely everything, including me. At midnight, something shifted. I can't explain it well. It wasn't anger or panic or jealousy. It was more like a quiet little voice whispering, "You should pack too." So I stood up, walked into the bedroom, and pulled my old hiking backpack from under the bed. I hadn't used it in months, and somehow that felt appropriate. Like I was about to do something that didn't fit into the normal rhythm of our life. I packed strangely fast for someone with no plan. 2 shirts, a jacket, toothbrush, laptop and charger, wallet. The essentials, or at least the essentials my foggy midnight brain thought I might need. I looked around the apartment, and for the first time it felt temporary. Like a hotel room after checkout time. Her mug was still on the counter. My sneakers by the door. The throw blanket half fallen off the couch. All the little signs of a life shared with someone you think you know. I wrote the note without really thinking about it. Spread my hand on the table to steady myself. Scribbled out 8 words that would either make me look brilliantly composed or completely unhinged, depending on her interpretation. "Enjoy your me time. I'm taking mine too." I left the note in the middle of the kitchen table, perfectly centered like a prop in a dramatic movie scene. Not because I wanted drama, but because I wanted her to actually see it. I didn't want her to think I'd been kidnapped by raccoons or something. Then I turned off the lights, put on my jacket, and walked out. Not angrily, not dramatically, just quietly. The hallway felt colder than usual. The elevator ride down was painfully slow, like the building was giving me time to reconsider. The lobby was empty except for that weird, flickering light above the mailboxes that the landlord swore he'd fixed 3 months ago. When I stepped outside, the night air hit me with this strange rush of clarity. It felt almost exhilarating, like stepping onto a train without knowing its final stop. I didn't even have a destination in mind. I just walked until my brain stopped replaying the moment she zipped her bag. At 1:30 a.m., she came home. I wasn't there to see it, but I can picture the scene perfectly. She unlocks the door, steps inside, sees the empty apartment, notices my missing backpack, and then her eyes drift to the note on the table. That was the moment everything shifted, because she didn't call. She didn't text. Not even a "where are you?" Just silence. A silence, so sharp it felt like proof of something I wasn't ready to name yet. I spent the rest of the night walking through the city, not rushing, not hiding, just letting my feet carry me wherever my thoughts went. Sometimes I'd slow down, expecting my phone to buzz, but it never did. It stayed completely, painfully quiet. And with every hour that passed, something in me changed a little more. By dawn, I realized I hadn't actually taken me time. I'd taken a step out of life I wasn't sure belonged to me anymore. That'd be why the time the sun finally crawled over the rooftops, I was sitting on a damp bench at the edge of the park, staring at my phone like it was about to confess something. I kept expecting some kind of message from her, confusion, annoyance, anger, anything. But the screen stayed blank except for two useless notifications. One from my bank and one from an app one kept forgetting to uninstall. I told myself I wasn't waiting for her to text, but that was a lie so thin it was practically transparent. I kept checking the phone every 5 minutes, just in case the universe decided to throw me a bone. Nothing. Not even a typing bubble. Not even a... For someone who had just walked out on his girlfriend in the middle of the night without any explanation beyond an 8-word note, I should have felt guilty. Or reckless. Or at least dramatic. But what I actually felt was this strange mixture of embarrassment and curiosity. Like I'd opened a door I wasn't supposed to open and now had to keep walking through the hallway, whether I liked it or not. Around 7:30 a.m., I decided I needed coffee. Not the emotional kind, but the biological kind that stops your brain from feeling like wet cardboard. There was a small cafe nearby that I'd only been to twice because their chairs squeaked every time you shifted your weight. I went anyway. I needed somewhere to sit that wasn't a park bench covered in dew and self-reflection. I ordered coffee, sat near the window, and watched commuters rush past like their lives were held together by calendar reminders and caffeine. Normal people. People who knew where they were supposed to be. People whose partners didn't casually disappear in the middle of the night. My phone stayed silent. At 8:12 a.m., yes, I checked the exact time. The first message finally came. But it wasn't from her. It was my friend Daniel asking if I wanted to grab lunch later. I stared at the notification like it was some kind of insult. I didn't reply. Instead, I texted her. "Me, hey, you home?" I waited, staring at the 3 dots that didn't appear. 5 minutes. 10 minutes. 15. Nothing. So I sent another message. "Me, you saw the note, right?" Another stretch of silence. Another stretch of me pretending I wasn't checking the phone like I was waiting for medical test results. Then, nearly 20 minutes later, her response popped up. Her, yes. Just that. A single word. A reply that felt so emotionally empty it made my chest tighten. I didn't care if she was mad. I didn't care if she was confused. But this felt like she was talking to a stranger who'd accidentally texted the wrong number. "Me, do you want to talk?" I watched the screen so intensely I probably burned the battery with my eyes. Eventually, another message appeared. Her, later. No emoji. No explanation. No question about where I'd gone or why I left. Just later. If she'd said anything else, literally anything, I could have worked with it. But that one word told me something I wasn't ready to admit. She wasn't surprised I left. Not even a little bit. Like part of her had already prepared for it. I sat there for a long time, nursing my coffee and pretending everything around me wasn't unraveling. People came and went. The barista changed shifts. A toddler threw a tantrum so loud the entire cafe froze for a moment. Meanwhile, I just kept scrolling through her 2-word text like it was a secret code I wasn't smart enough to decode. Around noon, I checked into a cheap hotel. The type with carpets that look like they've survived several questionable decades and a lingering smell of lemon-scented cleaning spray. I used a fake name, not because I was hiding from her, but because the desk clerk asked, "Name on the reservation?" and my brain panicked and blurted out Andrew Stone. My real name is not Andrew. Or Stone. Great start to my independent adventure. Inside the room, I dropped my backpack on the floor and sat on the edge of the bed. The silence was so thick it felt physical. I thought about turning on the TV, but even that felt too loud, too normal, too much like pretending this was just a spontaneous solo vacation. So instead, I lay back on the bed and replayed everything from the night before. Her tone, the bag she packed, The kiss on my cheek that felt like someone signing their name at the bottom of contract. The way she didn't even ask where I went. I checked my phone again. Still nothing. By 1 p.m., I cracked and called her. It rang once, twice, 3 times. Then it went to voicemail. Her voicemail greeting was so painfully cheerful that I hung up before the beep. For a moment, I just sat there staring at my reflection in the black screen of my phone. A tired guy in a cheap hotel with the kind of expression that usually comes with the phrase, "I might have seriously miscalculated." At 1:17 p.m., she finally texted again. Can we talk tonight? I stared at it for a while, then typed. Mia, where? Her reply came quicker this time. Home. Home. Our home. The place I walked out of like an idiot with a backpack full of bad decisions. For a second, I actually considered not going. For another second, I imagined walking in and seeing her suitcase by the door. For a third second, I imagined her looking at me with that calm, steady expression she uses when she's already made up her mind. I didn't respond right away. Instead, I took a long shower, letting the hot water burn away some of the restless energy buzzing under my skin. I stayed under the water until it ran cold. When I got out, I felt slightly more human, slightly less like a man unraveling in slow motion. By late afternoon, I still hadn't heard from her again. No follow-up text. No hint about what she wanted to discuss. No emotional breadcrumbs for me to follow. But the silence said enough. The silence said too much. At 6 p.m., I started walking back to the apartment. And the closer I got, the more I realized something. Whatever she was going to say tonight, whatever conversation we were about to have, it wasn't going to be the kind you forget. This wasn't about me time. This wasn't about one night apart. This was the beginning of something I hadn't seen coming, or maybe it's seen coming and just ignored. And the worst part? I couldn't tell whether I hoped she'd be there waiting for me or feared it. Walking back to the apartment felt like walking toward the scene of a crime I wasn't sure I committed. Every block got heavier, like gravity had decided to double itself specifically for me. By the time I reached our building, my palms were sweating and my chest felt tight in a way that had nothing to do with the cold air. The lobby looked exactly the same. Same flickering light, same dusty potted plant that was clearly dying but somehow still alive enough to be depressing. But everything felt different, like the building itself knew something was about to happen. The elevator ride to the 5th floor was painfully slow, and when it finally opened, I almost turned around and went back down. Not because I was scared, but because the silence in the hallway felt like a warning sign I didn't have the courage to read. Our door was closed. The lights inside were off. For a moment, I thought she wasn't home. And honestly, I didn't know if I was relieved or disappointed. I unlocked the door, stepped inside, and froze. She was sitting on the couch. She didn't look angry or devastated or confused. She just looked tired, the kind of tired that sits behind the eyes and stays there no matter how much sleep you get. Her bag was on the floor next to her, zipped shut like it had been placed there gently hours ago. "Hey," she said quietly. "Hey." I answered, closing the door behind me. We stared at each other for a few seconds that felt like an entire separate lifetime. Then she motioned for me to sit, so I did, on the opposite end of the couch, like we were two strangers sharing a bus seat. She inhaled deeply, the kind of breath people take right before ripping off a bandage. "You leaving last night?" she started, then paused. It surprised me. "Did it, though?" I asked, a little sharper than I intended. She flinched, not dramatically, but enough that I felt instantly guilty. "I didn't think you'd actually go," she said. "I figured you'd, I don't know, ask questions." "I did," I said. "You didn't answer." That shut both of us up for a moment. She looked down at her hands. They were shaking slightly, and she clasped them together like she was trying to force them to behave. Then she said it, the sentence that sat in her throat for God knows how long. "I've been thinking about taking a break." I felt that like a punch straight to the ribs. Not because I didn't expect it. In hindsight, every sign pointed toward this exact moment, but because hearing it out loud made everything suddenly real. "A break from what?" I asked, even though I already knew. "From us," she whispered. It felt like the room tilted slightly, like gravity shifted a couple degrees just to mess with me. I didn't yell. I didn't curse. I didn't fall apart. I just sat there with this calm, numb sensation filling the space where my emotions were supposed to be. How long have you been thinking about it? I asked. She hesitated, which was answer enough, but eventually said, a few weeks. A few weeks. We'd eaten dinner together, slept in the same bed, watched a terrible reality show she insisted wasn't scripted. And the whole time she'd been carrying around the idea of taking a break like a secret she wasn't ready to unwrap. Why didn't you say something? I asked. I didn't know how, she said. Every time I tried, it felt like the wrong moment. And then it felt like the next moment was worse. And then suddenly too much time passed, and I froze. I let that sink in. So the bag last night? I finally asked. She nodded. I was going to stay at a friend's place. I just needed space to think. And you didn't want me to come with you, I said flatly. It wasn't about you being there, she said, but her voice cracked. It was about me trying to understand if I still know who I am outside of us. That hit harder than the breakup comment. I feel like I've been disappearing a little, she added. Not because of you, just because I let myself. The room felt too warm suddenly, too small, like the walls were leaning in, listening. So you wanted me time, I said slowly, because you don't know if you want us anymore. I didn't say that, but you didn't deny it, I countered. Silence. She closed her eyes for a moment, inhaled, exhaled, and finally looked at me again. This time her eyes weren't tired, they were scared. Genuinely scared. I love you, she said. Duh. But I feel like I'm losing myself. And I don't know if I've been trying to fix the relationship or avoid the parts of myself I don't want to deal with. Her voice shook. I'd never seen her like that. I didn't know what to say. I didn't even know what I was supposed to feel. Every emotion rushed forward at once. Sadness, anger, confusion, defensiveness, and then all of them tangled together until I was left with nothing but this hollow ache. So what happens now? I finally asked. She wiped her eyes with the sleeve of her sweater. I think we need time apart. Not permanently. Just space. Space. That word again. The one she'd been orbiting around, but never saying directly. And you didn't think telling me earlier would have helped? I asked quietly. I was scared you'd think I didn't love you. Do you? Yes, she said instantly. But love doesn't fix everything. That sentence landed heavier than all the others. Love doesn't fix everything. I didn't respond. Couldn't respond. I just stared at the rug, tracing the pattern with my eyes like it was going to reveal some secret answer. She whispered, I didn't expect you to leave last night, but maybe it was the wake-up moment we both needed. Her voice was soft, not cruel, not dismissive, just heartbreakingly honest. The kind of honesty that's too late to prevent damage, but still necessary. I leaned back on the couch, rubbed my face with both hands, and said the only thing that didn't feel like a lie. I don't know what to do right now. She nodded. Me either. We sat like that, not touching, not fighting, just sitting in the wreckage of an unspoken truth, until the room felt heavy enough to swallow us whole. This wasn't the end, but it wasn't the beginning anymore either. And somewhere deep inside, I realized something terrifying. Maybe the silence between us didn't start last night. Maybe it started long before either of us noticed. The irony is that once people finally admit they need space, the hardest part isn't the separation itself. It's the quiet, awkward choreography of two people trying to create emotional distance while still sharing a home. We didn't break up. We didn't fight. We didn't cry, scream, or throw accusations across the room. We just shifted. That night, after our conversation, she slept in the bedroom and I slept on the couch. Not because she asked and not because I offered. It just happened naturally, like gravity pulled us into different corners of the apartment. I never felt so close to someone while also feeling so unbearably far away. The next morning, she made coffee. Usually she makes 2 cups, one for her, one for me, in this small rhythmic ritual we'd formed over years. But that morning, she made only one. And when she realized what she'd done, she froze with this guilty, apologetic expression that hurt more than the missing coffee ever could. I'm sorry, she said softly. It's okay, I replied, because what else do you say to that? But it wasn't okay. None of this was okay. She left for work without kissing me goodbye. I watched the door close and listened to the silence echo through the apartment for the second time in 2 days. The silence and I were becoming close friends. I worked from home that day, if you can call constantly rereading the same email working. Every corner of the apartment felt strange, like a museum of our life together. The couch where we binge-watched shows. The table where we played cards during quarantine. The corner where she'd once danced around for 5 minutes because a spider crawled out from behind a plant. I couldn't look at anything without remembering everything. That night, when she came home, she seemed cautious, like she wasn't sure if she was walking into a conversation or a minefield. "Hey," she said. "Hey." We talked about dinner like two coworkers deciding what snacks to order during a late shift. Neutral. She told me something that stuck with me. She looked down, twisting her hands. She said that sometimes people don't fall out of love. They fall out of alignment. I didn't know what that meant. Not really, but I knew it scared me. She continued. She said maybe we stopped meeting each other where we used to. Not because we stopped caring, but because life shifted and we didn't shift with it. I swallowed hard. "Do you think that's what happened?" "I don't know," she whispered, "but I think I want to find out." There was a long silence. Not the cold kind. Not the heavy kind. A different kind, like the moment right before someone steps forward. And then she asked me something, my girlfriend added. A question I couldn't answer. "What question?" I asked. She raised her eyes to mine. "Do you miss him?" The room felt suddenly smaller, quieter, thicker, and I realized, I do. I miss you. I miss us. And that scares me because it means I drifted away without even noticing. My throat tightened. Then why does it feel like we're still drifting? Because, she said softly, I'm terrified that the version of us I missed doesn't exist anymore. That was the moment, right there, when something cracked inside me. Not in a painful way, but in an honest way. A way that made me realize she wasn't the only one who drifted. I had too. Quietly. Gradually. Without noticing. We weren't breaking apart. We had already broken, just slowly enough that neither of us saw when the fracture began. And now, sitting across from each other in the dim evening light, I realized something else. This space she needed. This distance. It wasn't about leaving. It was about deciding whether we were worth finding again. The strange thing about reaching the edge of a relationship is that you expect a dramatic moment, a fight, a confession, some cinematic turning point where everything becomes clear. But the truth is quieter, softer, almost anticlimactic. It doesn't happen in one night. It happens in dozens of tiny moments you don't notice until you're standing in the middle of them, unable to pretend anymore. The day after she told me she missed me, the old me, the version of us that felt aligned, something shifted again. Not forward, not backward, more like sideways, in a direction neither of us expected. It started with breakfast. For the first time in a week, she made 2 cups of coffee again. She set mine on the counter in front of me, not with a smile, but with the quiet intention of someone who wanted to rebuild something fragile without making a big deal out of it. "Thanks," I said. She nodded. We ate in silence, but it wasn't the painful kind anymore. It was the kind of silence that knew it needed to exist so words could settle. Around noon, she asked if I wanted to take a walk. Not a serious talk walk. Not a decision-making walk. Just a walk. Something normal people do when life isn't collapsing around them. And for the first time since everything happened, it felt like a good idea. We walked through the neighborhood in slow, awkward steps. Not touching. Not brushing hands. Just walking side by side like 2 people relearning the shape of each other's presence. She spoke first. "Do you think we stopped choosing each other?" she asked. I thought about it. Maybe we stopped showing each other that we were choosing each other. She nodded, biting her lip the way she does when she's absorbing something. The walk lasted an hour, maybe more. And for the first time in a long time, she told me things she hadn't said out loud. Not because she didn't want to, but because she didn't know how. "I started feeling small," she said. "Not because you made me small, but because I started shrinking myself. I stopped asking for what I needed. I stopped saying when something hurt. And then I blamed the relationship for feelings I wasn't even giving you a chance to understand. Hearing that felt like someone had opened a window in a room that had been closed for years. "And you?" she asked softly. "What about you?" I hesitated, Not because I didn't know the answer, but because saying it out loud felt like admitting something I'd ignored for too long. I think I went quiet, I said finally. Not emotionally, just quietly complacent. I assumed things were okay because you didn't say they weren't. And then I got so used to us being comfortable that I didn't notice we'd stopped growing. We stopped walking. She looked at me like she was seeing something new. Why didn't we talk about any of this earlier? She asked. Because we didn't realize it was happening, I said. And by the time we did, it felt too big to unpack. She nodded again, slowly, like she was filing that thought away. We returned to the apartment around 3 p.m. The air inside felt different, lighter somehow. Not because we'd solved anything, but because we'd finally acknowledged the problem instead of running from it. For the rest of the day, we talked. Not about breaking up, not about getting back together. Just talked. About the stress she'd been carrying. About the things I'd overlooked. About how two people can love each other deeply and still drift apart without meaning to. It wasn't a dramatic, teary, cinematic conversation. It was raw and imperfect and human. The kind of conversation that rebuilds something quietly without you realizing it. At one point, she said, I didn't want to lose you. I just didn't know how to find myself while still being with you. And for the first time in days, maybe weeks, I understood exactly what she meant. Because I'd felt lost too. I just hadn't admitted it. When evening came, she sat on the couch, knees drawn up, looking small in a way that made my chest ache. Can I ask you something? She said. Of course. Why did you leave that night? What made you walk out? I thought about lying, saying something poetic, or something emotionally impressive. But the truth was simple. Because your silence scared me, I said. Because I didn't know how to sit in a space where I wasn't sure if you still wanted me. And because sometimes people run when they don't know what else to do. She didn't look angry or disappointed. She just looked sad. I didn't want you to run, she whispered. I wanted you to notice. I did, I said. I just didn't know what I was noticing. A long silence followed. Not tense, just full. She shifted slightly and said, Do you think we can fix this? I didn't answer right away. Because fixing something implies returning to what it used to be. But what we used to be wasn't enough anymore, for her or for me. I don't think we should fix us, I said slowly. I think we should build something new. She blinked, breathing out a shaky laugh. I didn't expect you to say that. Neither did I admitted. She moved closer, not all the way, just enough that I could feel a small shift in the air between us. So what does that mean? She asked. It means, I said, we start over. Not as strangers, not as broken people trying to glue the pieces back, but as two people who still choose each other, intentionally this time. She looked at me for a long moment, eyes soft, full of something fragile and hopeful. Okay, she whispered, then I choose you, and I choose me too. I think maybe that's the part I've been missing. I nodded, and I choose you, but I choose me too. She reached out, slowly, like she wasn't sure if she was allowed, and took my hand. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't desperate. It was gentle, a beginning, not a return. We sat like that until the room grew dark around us, not saying anything else, not needing to. Because the truth was simple. She didn't want space from me. She wanted space from the version of herself she'd become without realizing it. And I didn't need to leave. I just needed to face the quiet instead of running from it. That night, for the first time in a week, we slept in the same bed again. Not tangled up in each other. Not pretending everything was perfect. Just two people choosing to stay. And maybe, just maybe, that's what me time was always supposed to lead to. Not separation, but rediscovery.